And so now we had a couple of years where it was very confusing. IDX required login, where a participant or somebody who came to the website that wanted to look at real estate had to somehow register and put in their username and a password. Of course, you could easily make up a username and password. You could go to Yahoo and create a fictitious email address, valid yet fictitious email account, and you could access all the information, and you could download all this information. You could sell it to moving companies. Now, legally, you really couldn't do that, but this set itself up for abuse and abuse of the data. And that's why NAR created the rules, to try to create some order. And so now it's really confusing. You got two sets of rules.
IDX and VOW.
IDX and VOW, and people were not clear about it, so NAR decided they would try to make it clearer. Now, the whole time, the Department of Justice not really understanding how the real estate business works, not really understanding that an MLS is a business-to-business kind of network, not understanding that real estate's a very competitive business, having this idea that there's somehow antitrust violation. And so they were in negotiation, the Department of Justice and NAR, over what these new VOW rules should say, and NAR didn't get real good response from the Department of Justice. So in August of 2005, NAR said, we now have one policy. Instead of IDX and VOW, we have ILD.
Internet Listing Display.
Internet Listing Display, ILD. And ILD now will cover all of the points of IDX and VOW. And of course, the Department of Justice, this was August of 2005, the Department of Justice did not like the opt-in provisions, nor did they like the fact that NAR in their new ILD rules were trying to define what it meant to be in the real estate business. Because one of the things that started to happen was a new business model started to grow, and that new business model had to do with selling leads to realtors. And so all you had to do was get a broker's license, join the MLS. You then had access through a VOW to all the data. You could put all the data on your website. You could advertise that people should go to your website to look at all the listing data. You could capture information about those people and then turn around and sell that lead information back to realtors. And that didn't seem fair. That realtors that work so hard and spend so much money to take the listing then could have somebody who had no intention of selling real estate take that data, market it on the internet, develop leads, and sell the leads back to the brokers and agents. Didn't seem fair. So NAR suggested in their new ILD rules that to be able to display listings of other brokers, you ought to at least be in the real estate sales business. And the Department of Justice didn't like that at all. And they said, oh, that's anti-competitive. You're trying to run these new business models out of business. Well, these new business models got no business being in the real. They're not in the business. They're in a different business. They're in the lead generation business, and yet they're using the assets of hardworking brokers. And we were very vocal about this, John.
Yes, you especially.
And we thought that the Department of Justice were just needlessly wasting taxpayers' dollars. They were barking up the wrong tree. They didn't understand. And of course, how do you fight an entity that has an unlimited pocketbook? And that's the Department of Justice. They have an unlimited pocketbook. Now, I have to say that as we talk about this, you're going to get some editorial comment from John and I. And so the Department of Justice, they don't really run out of money. The U.S. government just taxes us. And the Department of Justice, you can't win against the Department of Justice because they have all the resources in the world at their disposal. And so the Department of Justice files this lawsuit. By the time they filed the lawsuit, it was actually obsolete. And they were actually arguing over points that didn't make any sense. And a couple months later, as the technology began to really replace this whole idea of virtual office websites, and I challenge you to really find virtual office websites today because you won't find very many. Who knows how much of our taxpayer money has been spent on this issue? And so just to summarize or review why we are going to talk about this Department of Justice NAR settlement is because listings went on the internet around 1996. In 2001, sharing of listing data became a reality. We called it IDX. In May of 2003, brokers who didn't want to play by the rules decided they would take the data of other brokers without permission of those brokers and create something called a VOW, or a vow. NAR was asked to please help create rules to regulate the use of this information, because very valuable information and sensitive information was being made available on the web. And so NAR, with the best of intentions, created a vow policy in May of 2003, tried to simplify it in August of 2005, and where are we today? May of 2008, and we have a proposed agreement. And that, John Reilly, is the history of internet listing display to this point.